We are recording this webinar for those folks that weren't able to make it today. They will be able to access this webinar after the fact. So you are all here today for the Climate Commitment Act reporting webinar. I'm Jenny Coe. I'm the Forest Health and Community Wildfire Resilience Program Manager. And the goal of this webinar today is just to provide some specific guidance on how to report the use of Climate Commitment Act funds and fill out a reporting form that us commission staff have created. So those of you that are here are either working directly with or overseeing Sustainable Farms and Fields, Forest Health, Riparian Grant, or the Community Engagement Plan. So those programs are all tied to the Climate Commitment Act funds, and we are going to show you how to do some reporting associated with that. So besides myself presenting today, we've got two other staff, program staff, that are going to be walking through this with you guys today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves real quick. Karen, do you want to go ahead first?
Sure. I'm Karen Hills. I manage the Sustainable Farms and Fields program for the Commission. And go ahead, Amy.
Hi, everyone. Amy Martin, Riparian Grant Program Manager.
All right. Thanks, Karen and Amy. Also, we have a couple other commission staff that are on here that can help answer questions. Shauna Joy is joining us today, and Jean Fike, who led the community engagement plan, is also here. So if we have any specific questions come up, they can also help answer questions. So as far as questions go, as we go through this webinar, we are going to be pausing to answer questions. Feel free to raise your hand or put your question in the chat, and Amy and Toyo are going to be tracking that for us. We will be capturing some of your questions in a FAQ document that we're going to put together, and that will get sent out after the fact as well. That will help you sort of reference some of the things that we go through that you might run into as you're trying to fill out the report form. So what I thought we would do first is just an overview of the funding situation from the Climate Commitment Act, and then some of the reporting that we've already done and the data that's available. So I'm going to go ahead and advance here. Okay, so quick overview. The Climate Commitment Act was signed into law in 2021. It is pretty heavily focused on reducing carbon pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. It also has a requirement that a certain percentage of these funds are focused in vulnerable populations within overburdened communities. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit later in the webinar because we know there will be questions around that. But in general, there was $32 billion that were appropriated across the state to 37 different agencies for this 23 to 25 biennium. 86.5 million of that was appropriated to the Conservation Commission, with the majority of those dollars getting passed through to the conservation districts. So just a quick summary: Sustainable Farms and Fields received 5.1 million. The Riparian Grant Program, which received 25 million from capital and 3 million from operating funds. Forest Health received 15 million, and the Community Engagement Plan received 250,000. So, of course, with these funds comes reporting requirements. And when the commission allocated these funds out, we didn't have a full knowledge of what the reporting requirements were going to be from ecology. And so when they asked for a fiscal year 24 report, we were kind of on a short timeline and working with brand new reporting forms and things. So rather than push that burden onto you, the conservation districts and staff, we decided that the commission that we would just do this first round of reporting ourselves and kind of get things figured out and better understand what kind of data ecology is looking for moving forward. So what we've done is, after going through that process of our first year of reporting, like I said, we have a better understanding of the nuances of how to collect the data and how there's some differences between these programs and how we're going to collect the data from you and how we're going to report it out. So we've done our best to create a form that we're going to walk through that collects the data that we need and hopefully is pretty straightforward for you guys to fill out. Most of you guys, for your funding for this is biennium funding, so it's 2 years worth of funding. And so since we're being asked to report on a yearly basis, we're hoping that for this round of reporting, we're going to get a lot better data and a lot more specifics and good information about the work that you guys have done through these programs that we can then report back to ecology. Because I think this funding source is going to continue to be important as we move forward in the future. And I think we're all going to benefit from getting familiar with this reporting process. One thing that's important to note is that this Climate Commitment Act report form that we're talking to you guys about today is separate from our regular inter-program reporting that you're going to do at the end of the biennium. So the two differences are this report that we're going through is going to be only for work that was done in fiscal year 2025. And we will be reminding you of that a few times throughout this. Your regular program reporting that you're used to doing is for the full biennium. So we just wanted to clarify that as we move forward. Oops. Okay. So as I mentioned before, we've done 1 year's worth of reporting. We reported out for fiscal year 24 to ecology. And so the way that they put that data and information that they got from us out to the public is there's two different public facing things. There's this report, which is a distribution of funds report. And I think Amy's going to put that in the chat for us. So you can check that out later. But if you go to page 35, you'll see the Conservation Commission highlighted in there. I don't think they got into a lot of details on our programs, but they did highlight the Forest Health Program and they highlighted the Riparian Grant Program in there. And then the other sort of outward public facing report that ecology is providing around these funds is the CCA dashboard. And that is also going to get linked in the chat for you so you can check it out. But it's an interactive site where you can go in and kind of filter out what agency you want information from, and it's going to spit out different statistics as far as like how much has been spent, how much was spent in 2024, what percentage of the work that you did was spent in working with vulnerable populations, things like that. So you'll see in the map, you see the orange dots. If you click on one of those dots, it's a specific project or a program, and it gives you a description of that project or program. So you can dig around in there and get some information. One thing that's important to note here is that because during this first round of funding, we weren't able to like get a full picture of all the work that the districts had done, the numbers and the stats that you're going to see for the commission in this first report are probably going to look a little bit questionable. But that's something that's going to change moving forward. And that's kind of the impetus behind creating a form where we can actually capture good data from you guys and then report it to ecology, and that will show up in here. So better data coming soon on this dashboard, I think, for what the commission and the districts have been doing with this funding. Lastly, I will say about this, it's important to note that when you guys are filling out this form that we're going to walk through, just be aware that anything you put in there, however you've exactly put it in there, could be public information. So what we noticed was like on this, when you click on one of those orange dots on this map, it pops up a project description or a program description, and it was taken verbatim what came out of the reporting form that we filled out. So we just want you to know that I know sometimes, you might feel snarky or you might want to put in something funny or whatever. Just kind of making stuff up, scenarios up there, but just be professional when you fill out the form. And I know that you will be, but I just wanted you all to be aware that we realized in looking at this dashboard that exactly what we put in those cells appeared in as public information. So heads up on that. And lastly, I just have one more slide. This is a great picture taken by Grace Harbor, by the way. We are going to move into the reporting form walkthrough. So Karen and Amy are going to go through the actual form step by step and how to fill it out, and we will answer questions as we go through that. Obviously, going through filling out a report isn't very exciting, so please bear with us. We know it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but it is important. And one thing I will mention before I turn it over to Karen and I stop sharing my screen is that each program has its own CCA reporting form because there was enough of these small differences between the programs and the funding that we needed to create separate forms for each one. So as Karen walks through an example, she's going to be using the Sustainable Farms and Fields report form. But she will call out some of the differences and where, it might be some question or some category might be a little bit different for another program in their reporting form. So just heads up on that. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Karen.
Thanks, Jenny. Let me get my screen sharing going here. Okay, hopefully you can see that. And Amy's going to be sharing the links in the chat for the reporting forms so that even though I'm going through the Sustainable Farms and Fields form, if that's not the one that you'll be filling out, you're welcome to follow along in the form that's most relevant to you. So we have Sustainable Farms and Fields, right? The Riparian grant program has two different forms, one for awards from the operating budget, which were for outreach, and one for awards from the capital budget, which were for TA, district implemented projects, cost share, and maintenance. If you're not sure which is appropriate, then definitely reach out to the program manager. There's a form for forest health and community wildfire resilience, which I'm going to just be referring to as forest health throughout, and then grants for community engagement planning that some districts undertook in this last biennium. So there's going to be some definitions that we're going to walk through that might be new to you. As always, if there's any questions that come up, we are happy to help you as you work through these forms. We know that it's new, and we've been through the process once, so we're happy to pass on what we've learned through that. So the deadline for this reporting is July 10th, which is the typical, the same as the typical program reporting deadline. And as Jenny mentioned, this will be reporting for expenditures in fiscal year 2025 only. So July 1st of 2024 to June 30th of 2025. This is set up so if you don't want to do it all in one shot, you can save it and come back to it later. So we're going to start with kind of the easy slow pitches at the beginning here to get us going. Name, email. There's a drop down for selecting your conservation district. And then you'll be asked to enter some information about what you're reporting on. And we have provided examples in each of the forms that, kind of the level of detail that we're looking for. So you're welcome to kind of format your names based on that. These are set up, for most of these forms, each district will only be filling out a maximum of one version of each form. The only exception to that is Sustainable Farms and Fields, where districts will be filling out one form per award. And we made little notations in the forms just to kind of remind you of those differences. It's possible maybe you didn't receive Climate Commitment Act funding, or your district didn't receive Climate Commitment Act funding this biennium, and you might just be looking into the future. If you're ever unsure, just ask, and we're happy to direct you to the right reporting to do. So now we have a little box here where we ask you to briefly describe the work that was conducted with the expenditures from the fiscal year. And this is that public facing description that Jenny mentioned. It doesn't need to be real long or involved. It can be pretty brief, and we give examples, provide examples for each of the types of funding of what that might look like. You're welcome to, take them, modify them, use them verbatim if they fit. There's no extra credit for, extra creative submissions here. It's just, we're trying to briefly put it out there what that work involved for folks that aren't really super fluent in the work of conservation districts. So then we get down to, and Lauren, I see your hand. We're going to pause for questions in just a minute. So I'm going to have you hold your question for just a minute here. So now we get into location. For most of these, you're just going to be using the district office address as the location. The only exception to that is for sustainable farms and fields. If the project occurred at a specific location, at one specific location, we're asking you to use the address for where that work occurred. If you had a sustainable farms and fields project that where work occurred at multiple locations, or was more focused on technical assistance or outreach across the district, then we're asking you to use the district office address. And then we move down and asking for the latitude and longitude associated with the address above. There's a little link here you can use to easily get that information. This is all pretty familiar for commission reporting so far. So now we're getting into questions about legislative districts and water resource inventory areas, or RIAs, and you'll be asked to select sort of the relevant ledge districts and RIAs where work occurred. This could be one, this could be multiple. It just kind of depends on the specifics of the project. And you can enter multiple ones there. Okay, I am going to pause for questions. So Lauren, you want to go ahead?
Can we get a copy, either like a Microsoft Word or PDF copy of the full form stack submission, so we can work off of that prior to filling it into form stack for each of the forest health and the other program forms?
Yep, that's fine. Just be aware there's a little bit of logic that we're using here so that not everyone has to answer every question that's if it's not relevant, but we're happy to provide those in Word format for folks to use. Yeah, no problem. Darla.
Yeah, I've been taking notes as I'm listening, so I might have missed it and you may have covered it. So with the sustainable farms and fields, you said that for specific SFF projects that were proposed, we must use the project address. Is that then, does that go on the map? Is that public, public information? And was that something that we were made aware of when we applied for it, or is this something that has come up afterwards? And I'm curious because fortunately the one project that I have is going to, I assume, be okay with that if it is public information, but I'm glad that it wasn't several other projects that could have been proposed, because this would have been a very, very bad backlash.
Yeah, so I think if I'm remembering correctly, and I need to double check, but the report that Ecology puts out summarizing the work, I believe had the lat longs. I have to double check. I don't think it had the address there. I'd say where there's sensitivity on that, let's use the district address Um, I, I guess there's, that's understandable. And I think that would be fine to default to the district address in those cases. Shauna, you can chime in if I'm off base here, but. Any other questions at this point? Okay. I'm going to keep on trucking through this then. Okay, so we've kind of warmed up with the relatively straightforward pieces of the form. Now we're going to get into what's likely kind of the newer piece for most folks. So now we're going to be answering questions about overburdened communities and vulnerable populations. We're going to talk through this and follow up with some examples to help with understanding how to approach these questions. There's a link that Amy's going to be dropping into the chat, which is guidance from the governor's office on identifying overburdened communities and vulnerable populations. And that's kind of the guidance. You don't have to dive into that if you're not the kind of person that likes to get deep into the weeds, but that's
Thank you.
what we're assimilating here for you and working off of. So we're going to go through some definitions here that are important to understand before we answer the first question. Direct and meaningful benefits. These definitions are provided in that document and in the HEAL Act and the Climate Commitment Act. So they're not things that we're making up. We are just delivering them to you so that you can use them in your reporting. So direct and meaningful benefits, there's 4 items here. The first one being the direct reduction of environmental burdens in overburdened communities. The second one is the reduction of disproportionate cumulative risk from environmental burdens, including those associated with climate change. The third is the support of community-led project development, planning, and participation costs. And then the fourth is meeting a community need identified by the community that is consistent with the intent of the CCA or HEAL Act. And those are linked to there if you want to read additional information. Overburdened communities are defined for the purposes of the Climate Commitment Act as geographic regions identified in the map prepared by OFM. There's a link to it here, and we'll also see it embedded in the form further down. We know that maps are not perfect. You'll also have the opportunity to describe other vulnerable populations that might be in areas not shown on the map. And then vulnerable populations. This definition is rather long, so I'm probably not going to read through the entire thing. But essentially, this is population groups that are more likely to be at higher risk for poor health outcomes in response to environmental harms. So there's more to that top definition there that you can read through. But essentially, vulnerable populations include, but are not limited to, racial or ethnic minorities, low-income populations, populations disproportionately impacted by environmental harms, and populations of workers experiencing environmental harms. So we, as the state agency receiving Climate Commitment Act funding, are required to report on which and how much of the funding provided direct and meaningful benefits to vulnerable populations within the boundaries of overburdened communities. So that is the question that we are passing through to the districts that are doing the great work with this funding. So the first question here is just a yes or no question. So you're going to be asked if any of the work supported by this funding and have met this bar and fits into this category. One way to think about this is that there's 3 definitions here. Really, all 3 of these things should be true if you select yes. And just want to note that not all work supported by the Climate Commitment Act funds are expected to select yes. This is, so we don't want anyone to stretch it or fudge it. We're trying to provide a true and accurate accounting of what, the great work that was done with this funding. So with that said, I'm going to go over just a couple examples of some types of work and talk about whether yes or no would be the appropriate answer to select here. We have additional examples that we'll be providing in that FAQ document. And then of course, if there's still some gray area and you're not quite sure what to do here, feel free to reach out. We're not policing this. We're just trying to help folks kind of sort through these definitions and make sense of them. So one example, the first example I'm going to provide is, let's say the work that your district did with this funding provided services or community planning activities, specifically targeting communities of color, Spanish-speaking communities, provided some outreach and engagement in Spanish language. That would be a yes. That would be, in my mind, a clear yes for this question. If you are conducting riparian restoration within an area identified as by OFM as an overburdened community, where water quality was identified as impaired, and the water quality improvements that occur would benefit that community, that would indicate that yes would be an appropriate selection for this first question here. And then let's go over a couple of examples where it may not be appropriate to select yes, so we would want to select no. If you had a prescribed grazing project supporting a producer whose property may fall within one of the areas on the OFM map that we're going to look at shortly, but doesn't meet the definition of a member of a vulnerable population, then select no. And then I also wanted to point out, you might be doing some work like a planning or restoration project with a beginning farmer or a veteran farmer. Those two types of farmers would qualify as an NRCS historically underserved producer, but that is a separate definition. So kind of put that aside in your head and just focus on the definition here of vulnerable population. So unless that person also fits the vulnerable population definition, then you would want to select no. So you can see it gets a little gray and a little fuzzy fairly quickly. You may be in a situation where you select no, where it's a clear no, okay? So if you do that, then you're just going to get kicked down to the next group of questions. But I'm going to show you on the form kind of what it looks like when you select yes, because we're going to get into a little bit more into the weeds on this. And then I'll take some general questions when we get to the end of this section. Okay, so let's say, yes, we've determined that the work supported by this funding provided direct and meaningful benefits to vulnerable populations within the boundaries of overburdened communities. Say that 5 times fast. Now we're going to go down to this overburdened communities of Washington state map. Okay, so this is a map that was created by OFM, and it's really a composite of several map layers that are kind of overlaid on each other. There's areas that are characterized as disadvantaged on the federal climate and economic justice screening tools. You have census tracts that are fully or partly within Indian country. And then you also have census tracts that are ranked 9 or 10 on the Washington Environmental Health Disparities Map. That's the origin of this map. Again, as I said, maps are never perfect in capturing everything, but this is the map that's been created for use here. So the question that you're going to be asked is if the work occurred in one or more of the areas shown in blue, which each have this unique identifier, this GeoID. So if yes, we select yes here, and then it's going to ask us to identify the GeoID of the overburdened community. It's a drop down, but you can type it in. You don't have to look through the hundreds of options there, or however many there are. So you can type in the GeoID there, and then you'll want to select which direct and meaningful benefits, which we just went over previously. Oh, I just saw a typo here. Okay, we'll fix that. Which are relevant to this work. Okay, I'm just picking a couple for the sake of this. And then you're going to be asked the percentage of fiscal year 25 funding for this work, which was spent in this GeoID. It may be an estimate. That's okay. Make your best estimate. So let's say it was 25%. We'll just put in 0.25. And then you're going to just do a little explanation of how the work you did provided the benefits that you select above. And a lot of times it's going to be, there's going to be some pretty pat responses that you can provide based on similar types of work happening within Forest Health Program, within Riparian Grant Program, within Sustainable Farms and Fields. You could be reducing the air pollution due to burning by implementing a chipping program. You could be improving the water quality by putting in riparian buffers. There's a lot of possibilities there. If you need help with that, please reach out. Happy to give you some language to figure out what to put in that section. Doesn't need to be long. Okay, so were members of the overburdened community you worked with involved in determining yes or no, determining and measuring the benefits? And then you're going to be asked to provide any relevant information collected through engagement with vulnerable populations within overburdened communities. That's an optional one. Now, you may have worked in more than one of these blue areas on the OFM map. So if you worked in multiple areas, it'll ask you if you want to add a second overburdened community, select yes, and you'll go through the same exercise again. So the goal here is we're getting an estimate of funding spent in each one and some additional details as we go. So let's just go back now and say, what if the work that your district did, fit that criteria of providing direct and meaningful benefits to vulnerable populations within overburdened communities, but didn't show up on this map? Let's say you were over here somewhere, or in one of the areas that's not in blue, but that it fits that those criteria. So then you're going to select no here, and you're going to be asked, we do have vulnerable populations to report that are not in the OFM map. And then you're going to be asked very similar questions, but instead of just identifying based on the GeoID from the OFM map, we're going to actually have you give a name or location description of the vulnerable population, some way that you're naming it, and then identify which of the HEAL Act categories apply to this vulnerable population. And then again, percentage of fiscal year 25 funding spent with this to benefit this population. So, and you'll have the opportunity to go through that exercise multiple times if there are multiple vulnerable populations that benefited from this funding. Okay, one extra piece, if you're identifying a vulnerable population that is not in one of those blue areas on the OFM map, you're going to be asked to describe the processes and/or methods, including data sources, mapping tools, and/or community consultation, which you use to identify the overburdened community. So it's not just, they want to provide a little backup to this, right? So I'm definitely not the expert in every single map or tool that's available out there, but we have the draft community engagement plan that the commission has. It does have some resources in the back, not a comprehensive list, but if you wanted to look through some of those, you could. If community consultation was the method that you used to identify this group, then you can describe that in this box. And then we just have this last optional question about any processes that have helped or hindered receiving the grant funding. This means from the commission to the district. The district is the subrecipient, and that's really what the ecology is asking here. Okay, so I'm going to pause now to open it up for general questions. I know this is kind of a lot of information that we just threw at you. I'm going to say, if you have a specific what if scenario, then that might be best to hold to talk specifics with your program manager. But if you want to ask the question in a general way, it might benefit other folks on the webinar. I see Eli.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. This might be applicable to several groups. Okanagan County has 9 separate of these blue blotches in it, and we did programming across every single one of them. That just seems excessive to have to report that 9 times over, considering it'll be the exact identical thing. Is there any way to update this form to capture multiple replicated work across multiple of these ones without having to essentially type out and check every box again ad nauseum?
Yeah, that's a good question. We ran into a few limitations of FormStack when we were setting this up, unfortunately. So I think that and I'm kind of answering this on the fly, so Jenny and Amy, if you have any thoughts on this, feel free to jump in too. I guess one question back at you would be, do you think that estimating the percentage will be feasible based on the way that the work went out, or will that be too challenging? Okay, I can see that.
Dividing 100% by 9 across 3.4 million acres is a little hard.
That's the way that would look. Okay, let's why don't you follow up specifically with because I'm not thinking of a quick and easy way to do that in the.
It seems to. I know you have it a drop down, but it seems like easy to have these as check boxes that you could check off these individual units as. That's just my idea there, but.
Oh, the GeoIDs?
Yeah, the GeoIDs and applicable to the following GeoIDs.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. We originally aimed to make this a little bit more user-friendly for the folks that were entering multiple ones, but like I say, we ran into some user interface limitations there, but I can see where you're going with that, and we're happy to work with you if you want to talk directly to the program manager who's going to be taking your information that you input and working on compiling that and packaging that up for ecology. There may be some workarounds that you can do, but why don't you talk directly to that person?
Yeah.
And I don't,
well, sure Jenny, expect my phone call then.
Always, Eli, always. No, I get where you're coming from there. And it might just be something to get through if we can't fix that in the form somehow, then it might be something where you choose the GeoID and then you just put you enter the information once and put same or something, and that way I just know what you're going for there. So we'll get back to you on that one.
Thanks.
Thanks for bringing that up.
We had a question in the chat related to this, which is, what is the percentage of the funds spent in that region based off of, and where to get that number? So if you have specific staff costs that you know of in association with like your total RGP award, or the award funds, RGP total award, or the funds that are related to the form you're filling out. So for SFF, a project, just approximately what percentage of that fiscal year 25 funds were associated with the work in that region. We know it's going to be approximate because this is not how we track data normally. And a lot of this information is new because of the CCA reporting guidance that evolved throughout last year, and I think was maybe finalized in June or July of last year. So we do appreciate everyone's efforts to adapt and accommodate this reporting effort, and happy to answer the questions that come up along the way.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, we're all in this learning curve together, but I think the smoother that we can make this, and the more that we can learn how to do this well, we will all be better off in the future. So, okay, I'm going to keep going then, and go down to this tribal involvement section. So in fiscal year 24, when we reported to Ecology, they were just asking about work that was supported through a formal tribal resolution. But there's some indications that they're looking to be a little more comprehensive in their approach, because as we know, there's a lot of work that tribes are engaged in or involved with in some way that that may not have risen to the level of a tribal resolution. So that's kind of what we're attempting to capture here. So you're going to be asked, first off, were there any activities conducted in partnership with the tribe or with the support of a tribe? And so that could be true whether or not the work occurred on tribal lands or off of tribal lands. So if the answer is no, then you're kind of bumped down to the next section. But let's say your answer is yes here. So the next question is whether any of the projects that you worked on were formally supported by a resolution of a tribal nation. In kind of the experience I've had so far is that this is quite unusual. It's possible that that's the case and you'll select yes. And then you'll be asked which tribe or tribes supported the project, what the funding amount was that was supported by the resolution of a tribal nation, and then describe the involvement of the tribe with the work. So what did that look like? Was that partnership? Was that co-development of a project, providing input to a project? So if we go back up here to the question about the resolution and select no, then you're going to be asked kind of similar questions here where we're trying to get at which tribe or tribes were part of this, were involved with this work, and what the percentage of expenditures were that contributed to that project, and then describing what that involvement looked like. So all kinds of different ways to get the same thing, but hopefully that is pretty straightforward. And I guess just to point out, the Climate Commitment Act funds did have a pre-application notification requirement that you all went through to receive this funds, just to notify the tribe that this work was occurring. that is, that was a requirement for all of the CCA funding that came out through the commission. But it's really not what is being asked about here. This is perhaps that notification led to some involvement or engagement, and you can capture that here, but the notification in and of itself is not what we're asking about in this section, just to clarify. Okay. Any questions on the tribal involvement piece?
Karen, we had a question from the earlier section. If assistance was provided to a low-income household, but they are not part of a low-income population, does this qualify? And my first thought is connecting back to the direct and meaningful benefits and whether it fits in with the full picture of what was provided there.
Yeah, I think that might be something to, I hate to punt the question, but I think that might be something to follow up with the program manager on the specifics, because the devil is in the details here sometimes. And I think it would depend on whether there were direct and meaningful benefits. And I mean, that does sound like the income piece would kind of check the box for the vulnerable population, but you know, there's a little bit of nuance here that might be helpful to work through one-on-one with the program manager. So feel free to follow up. I don't know which program that one is relevant to, but
It's Forest Health.
okay.
I will look into that and get a hold of Kathy. Follow up.
Okay, these are good. We're getting the wheels turning though, right? Like that's what we're aiming to do here, because what we don't want to have happen is have it be, you know, July 1st and everyone's like, oh no, I have to do this new kind of reporting. So good to be thinking about this. Okay, we're almost to the end here. We're going to talk a little bit about the questions on greenhouse gas emission reductions. If you are reporting for Riparian grant program outreach or community engagement plan, you won't need to do this part. It will not show up on your form. If you are reporting for forest health, there is not currently a tool that is appropriate to report on greenhouse gas emission reductions, so you will not need to report this time. That may change in the future, we'll see. So really, if the folks that need to be paying attention at the moment are those that are reporting for sustainable farms and fields work and for the Riparian grant program capital funds. So I'm going to talk about what this would look like for sustainable farms and fields, and I'll hand it over to Amy to talk a little bit about the Riparian grant program capital funds. So if you have a sustainable farms and fields funding award that involved only technical assistance or outreach, then when you're asked if the project includes activities that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, you will select no. Technical, TA and outreach do not reduce greenhouse gas emissions directly. So that's fine, but then we need to go down here and check. We're provided a bunch of categories. These are all from ecology. This is how they're reporting it. So we need to select the categories that apply to these types of projects that are not reporting greenhouse gas emissions reductions. So easy enough. And now we're going to go back up, and let's say we do have a project that involves, you know, BMPs implemented on the ground that are reducing greenhouse gas emissions. You're going to be asked, what's the projected quantity of reduced greenhouse gas emissions in metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year? All of the folks that have applied for sustainable farms and fields are probably familiar with this abbreviation here. So on your Sustainable Farms and Fields application, if you were implementing a BMP on the ground, you were asked to estimate the metric tons of CO2 equivalent impact, and that's the number that you're going to use here. You should already have submitted output from a tool as part of your application. So that's what you'll use here. If you don't know where in the heck you saved that, like, get in touch with me and I'll help dig up your application and feed that back to you. If you made a change to that project, like, after it was funded, but before it was completed, maybe the number of acres changed or some detail of that project changed that would impact this estimate, then I'm going to ask you to rerun that tool. So that's what it looks like for Sustainable Farms and Fields. And I'm going to flip over to the Riparian Grant Program Capital Funds form, and Amy can talk you through what's happening here.
Thanks, Karen. I dropped the comment planner in the chat. What we'll be reporting on for greenhouse gas emission reductions is for newly installed riparian buffers. So it's a pretty straightforward tool if you haven't used it before, but you can pick, woody plantings and then riparian forest buffer or hedgerow, depending on what you installed, and you just need acreage, and it'll pop out the number that you need. We are not at this year reporting for maintenance acreage, since that varies a lot. And there's not a good tool for just doing like number of plants installed for like a tree shrub establishment if you were doing like a supplemental planting project related to like more maintenance. So we're just going to be using the acreage of newly installed riparian acres in our reporting this year. And so in the tool, there's a couple different options. Woody plantings is probably going to be the closest with the tools that you need, but there's also cropland to herbaceous cover or restoration of disturbed lands that might be options for you as well. So choose the practice and the situation that best fits the scenario you're working on. And it's just a sum for everything installed in your district in fiscal year 25 using RGP funds. So we don't need it by project, just the sum of the newly installed acreage for your district in fiscal year 25.
Okay, thanks, Amy. I don't know if there's any questions because I'm not monitoring the chat, but we can take questions on the greenhouse gas emissions reduction reporting piece now, if there are any, or you can think about it and drop them in the chat and we'll have another opportunity for questions in a few minutes.
I don't see any questions in the chat yet, Karen.
Okay, great. So sometimes those questions come up once you get into the weeds on actually using the tool. So Amy especially I know this is new for Riparian grant program folks, so she'll be happy to help you with that. Okay, so we just have two optional questions that you can answer if you would like. So the first one is if there were any co-benefits associated with this expenditure, please explain in 3 to 5 sentences. So co-benefits, of course, are the benefits that occur that maybe weren't the initial or the main reason that the project was implemented, but sort of extra things that happen, like let's say for thinking of like a Sustainable Farms and Fields project where a manure separator is installed. Not only does it have greenhouse gas emission reduction benefits, it also preserves capacity in the lagoon and aids in nutrient management on the farm. There's a lot of, soil health impacts of prescribed grazing. You all kind of know these types of things, but I'm pretty sure that the examples in the Forest Health and the Riparian Grant Program also provide you some language. If you'd like to use that, you're welcome to copy and paste it verbatim or modify it to fit your project. And is there anything else you would like us to know about this program or project? These are optional questions coming from ecology. You can use this to sing the praises of your work if you'd like. Just keep it brief. I think that's kind of one of my main take homes is keep it brief. So, yeah, I think that's all that I have in the form stack share. When you submit the form, it's gonna kick a copy of it back to you. We will be, the program managers will be kind of packaging it up and sharing it over to ecology. If there's any questions or things that need clarification, we will reach back out to you and chat about your submission before we send it over. Okay, I'm going to hand it back to Jenny.
Okay, thank you, Karen and Amy. Let me just share my screen again. Make sure I do the right one. Okay. You guys all see my screen? Okay. All right, so just to wrap things up, it looks like we're going to get done a little bit early today and give you back some time, but if anybody wants to stay on a little bit longer to ask questions or something, we can stick around for a few minutes and see if anybody wants to do that. Just this slide is just a quick reminder of some of the important things to take away. The deadline for this report is July 10th, 2025, obviously. And the reporting time frame for the work that you've done that you're going to report on in this form is July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. So only the second year of your biennium funding. Next up, we will be following up with an email that has the link to the recorded webinar. That link will also be on the Commission's website on the Climate Commitment Act page. We will also include a link to the FAQs that we're going to create based on what we got out of this webinar and the conversations we had. And that'll be a reference for you as when you get to reporting time frame. Of course, we're going to be reminding you about deadlines and things as we get closer. And then, as has been mentioned numerous times now, please feel free to reach out to the program managers for assistance if you run into any problems or if you have questions as you're working through it. The region managers will also be available to help, but it'll be sort of like to answer basic questions. So you can decide who is the most appropriate person to talk to if you have any questions about that. And this is just our contact information if you need to get a hold of us. Otherwise, if you have any questions and you want to stick on for a few minutes with us, go ahead. Otherwise, we'll give you back half an hour of your day, and thank you for working through this with us. We appreciate it. Okay, I see Darla. Their hand up.
Just a quick question. Do you guys foresee any shifts, updates, changes, or kind of, I don't know, increase in intensity in this reporting moving forward? Obviously, we don't know if we're going to have, I assume, this funding moving forward, but is this kind of their standard at this point?
I would say yes. There might be some small tweaks to the way that they ask some of the questions moving forward, potentially. And so if something needs to change in the future, obviously we will update that in the form. But for now, we are not anticipating any major changes as we move forward. I don't know if Karen or Amy have any additional insight they want to add, but
I would add that we are keeping in touch with the ecology folks that are tasked with drafting these reports and updating this material over time. So we'll try to get folks in the know on changes as soon as we can.
Perfect, thank you.
I'm not seeing any other hands or anything additional in the chat other than thank you. So just give it another second just to make sure. Oh, I guess I'm sharing my chat screen with you. Sorry about that. Okay, I think we're good. Let's go ahead and close out. Thank you everyone for being here today.